Hey everyone, this is Nick, and I just realized that my beard is not really symmetrical again, but that's not a problem. Welcome to this Linux and open source news show. Today we've got SteamOS absolutely destroying Windows. We have a comparison on the exact same hardware, the Lenovo Legion Go S, with SteamOS and with Windows, and SteamOS really wins. Then we've got the release of the kernel 6.15, which has a bunch of interesting improvements and some cool stuff coming to Firefox, as well as Mozilla really tries to focus on that browser. And we also have this message from our sponsor. So this video is sponsored by Proton Mail. I don't think I need to introduce them by now. They have a full-on privacy suite. It's all end-to-end encrypted and zero-access encrypted. They give you an email account, a calendar, contacts, also storage space, a password manager, a VPN, everything that you need to replace the proprietary closed source, privacy invasive alternatives that are Google and Microsoft and Apple, for example. Proton Mail is what I use for my own personal email. They have a full-on suite of tools that let you make sure that you're not as susceptible to spam, to phishing attacks. You have all the controls that you need. It is all, of course, encrypted, so your email stays where you want it to be, which is just accessible to you. They have apps for every device out there. They're really solid. So you can get started with a free account that will give you access to all the tools and 5 gigs of free storage, but of course they have paid plans for more storage and more privacy-focused options. I can only recommend them. The link is in the description. You know where to go if you want to get started with Proton. So let's begin with SteamOS, and as it lands on more and more devices, including the Lenovo Legion Go S, there have been a bunch of performance tests and comparisons, and it looks like SteamOS absolutely trounces Windows when it comes to performance, to battery life, and to usability. You might know about Dave2D, he's a well-known YouTuber, and he ran a few numbers on those devices. And in Cyberpunk, Helldivers 2, Doom Eternal, The Witcher 3, and others, SteamOS always beats Windows by wide margins, on average about 15% better frames per second on the exact same device. The only game where SteamOS loses to Windows is Spider-Man 2, and that's by 1 FPS on average. Dave did not share highs and lows for these games as far as I could find, so maybe this is not fully indicative of performance. You also need to look at how smooth the frame rate is over time. Maybe SteamOS has issues with that, but on average it does perform a lot better. And also, battery life is much better. For example, running Dead Cells 2, SteamOS can run for about 6 hours, where the same device running Windows only reaches 2 hours and 45 minutes. The comparison here is abysmal for Windows. And that's not even talking about the ease of use and interface, which is just miles better on SteamOS than it is on Windows, where the system just does not have a usable interface for a controller. So it has to load the OS, then load various launchers and tacked on interfaces made by Lenovo or other manufacturers that would run Windows, meaning the experience is just not as seamless. You also have to update all of that crap in the background all the time. Now, we know Windows is working on a dedicated handheld interface, but right now it is clear that the best choice is the SteamOS version of any device that gives you access to that. Even with the translation layers, the system is just much better optimized and has much lower overhead than Windows. Now, of course, there's still game compatibility to talk about, because if your main game is Fortnite or any online competitive shooter, then of course SteamOS might not be the right choice for you. But also those devices aren't really made for those kinds of games. So if you're an average gamer and you just want to play your Steam library, it is clear that if a device offers SteamOS or Windows, you go with the SteamOS version, and the games that don't run perfectly, you'll play them with game streaming or something else, or on another device. Now, the Linux kernel 6.15 was released coming with the initial stub driver for the Nova NVIDIA driver. This is the Rust-based driver that Red Hat is developing to replace Nouveau on recent NVIDIA GPUs. It currently doesn't really do anything, but it's the foundation for what will ultimately take over Nouveau. The Intel Xe graphics also saw some improvements, but what's more interesting is the new firmware control subsystem, or FWCTL. This is something that standardizes how the kernel calls to firmware, how it can be configured, updated, and debugged straight from user space, meaning this would make it much easier to get firmware updates onto your system, but apparently this has been a controversial addition as it seems to bypass some pre-existing APIs and it doesn't follow standard kernel development processes. Now, I'd say that if Torvalds, who is generally very picky about that stuff, if Torvalds said okay to it, I think it's fine and I'm not a competent enough developer to even have an opinion on this. SE Linux should also be able to apply policy controls to some data that is being read by the kernel to harden Linux systems just a bit more, and there's also much better performance for network heavy workloads, a new API to let apps monitor file system mount changes and either inform the user or act on those mounts. Fuse systems should hang less. Deleting files on exFAT systems should be much faster, meaning that when you delete something from a USB drive and unplug it, it should go much more smoothly than it is currently. There's more ARM and RISC-V support, an improved driver for the PS5 controller and other controllers as well, and a lot more. It is a big new version of the kernel with sizable changes, but of course it will all depend on your distro, whether you get this or not, or whether you get this soon or late. As always, just wait for your distro to package it. It's just much safer. They do some customizations most of the time on that kernel, so it's safer than trying to install a vanilla one and crossing your fingers that everything stays unbroken. Now, it looks like Firefox is getting a revamped search and URL bar. First, they're gonna be adding a little search button on the left of that bar that lets you switch between search engines quickly, but you can also access from that menu an overview of your tabs, of your history, of your browser settings, and various actions that you can do on the web page. The search query that you typed will also remain visible in the search bar instead of being replaced by the URL of the search engine you have used to get answers. Something that shouldn't be an issue for most people. Generally, when you search using the URL bar, you're using the configured default search engine, so you don't really need to confirm that you're accessing the right search engine. But in some cases, you might have installed a weird extension that changed your search engine for something that looks like maybe Google or whatever else, and you might not know that you're not using the right one. Technically, you shouldn't have a problem if you don't install weird extensions, but you never know. I would expect that they will give an option to revert that back to the previous behavior, but they didn't say if this was going to be the case or not. You can also search through your history, your actions, your bookmarks, and your tabs by just prefacing your search with the @ symbol and then the thing you want to search in specifically, like @bookmarks, for example. You can also just type what you want to do in the bar, like take a screenshot, to have the browser do it directly. This is an interesting change. It will definitely not revolutionize how you use Firefox. It will probably not be the change that gives Firefox 100,000 million new users, because that's just not a real number, but also it's good. Like, Firefox is getting better, Mozilla is being focused on that web browser, trying to improve it where it matters, and I think that's a good move. It really restores trust in the guidance that Firefox receives from Mozilla. I think it's good. On the same topic, Firefox 139 was released this week, really not that long after the previous version, and this new one includes better performance on HTTP/3 connections, which apparently should make uploads from Firefox much faster. That's something I'm looking forward to personally, because uploading YouTube videos can take a while, even with my really good connection. Another change is the custom new tab wallpaper. You'll be able to set any background color or image as the background for that new tab page for that little extra customization. The color of the links and the text that is displayed on top should automatically adjust to stay readable no matter what you choose. Extensions pages should also be translated through Firefox's automatic page translation feature, which should be a nice help for non-English speakers. And of course, the AI link previews are now available in Firefox Labs if you want to test them. This will download an AI model on your device because it is all done locally, and according to what I've seen online, it doesn't seem like it's fast or accurate, but it could get better as it gets closer to a full-scale release. You can also expect more changes for developers, better dev tools, better inspector tools, and stuff like that. Again, I don't think these are the changes that will bring people back to Firefox. I think focusing on way better performance and way better responsiveness in the application would really make a bigger impact on how many people use Firefox or not, but also optimizing a browser engine is probably a lot more work than adding a few, let's call them power user features. So I think still it's a good focus. I won't repeat myself. Good job, Firefox. You're really focusing on the browser, and that's what people want. Now, as Rust is slowly being adopted more and more in more and more projects, they're also working on things that people complain about, notably how well the language integrates with multi-language code bases. On the Linux front, notably, Rust developers have made progress on stabilizing the tools that are used by that Rust plus Linux integration. They've laid out how flags can modify the application binary interfaces, they've created a stable way to rebuild Rust core with specific compiler options, and they've added features to Rust doc and other tools used by Rust developers so they integrate better with the Linux kernel's build system. This alone should make Rust a nicer citizen in the Linux kernel's ecosystem, and code written in Rust should behave appropriately at compile time, so people are maybe a bit less annoyed at it. They've also tried to stabilize some features used by the Rust Linux integration, but they still have some things to solve on that front. I think it's a nice reminder that the Rust on Linux thing is still experimental. They do have to build all those bindings, all those interfaces, and all those processes on how you make sure that multiple languages can interact inside of the same code base. This is not an easy thing to solve, but I think they've showed that they are capable of doing that and that they are willing to do that, which I think maybe will smooth over the hard edges of how Rust is being accepted or not accepted by certain projects. Now, XFCE finally has their own Wayland compositor, which is now merged in XFWM, which is XFCE's window manager. It's based on WL roots, which is a sort of reference implementation that you can use to kickstart your own Wayland compositor. It is a compositor in itself, WL roots, but generally it is used as a base by a bunch of others like Sway, for example. Now, this new window manager probably isn't usable right now. It's also not going to be enabled until XFCE 4.22. That's likely a long while away because XFCE 4.20 released at the end of last year, and they generally only have those big updates every 2 years. So don't expect full-blown Wayland support soon, but it is still a good sign towards this desktop's transition to the newer Linux stack. This is a big part of XFCE's Wayland transition, but it is not the only one that they need to solve. They still have to finish porting their settings, and a lot of the default apps that they use, plenty of them have partial ports, but a few features are missing in a few applications, and some of them just flat out crash on Wayland. All in all though, their transition is well underway, with the desktop itself and its panels already supporting Wayland, most applets working properly, and most apps at least working natively without needing X-Wayland. Now, I had expressed in the past some concerns about those smaller desktops, or at least desktops that don't have as many developers, on whether they could do that Wayland transition, whether they would do it in a timely manner, because it took a long while for GNOME and KDE to have fully working Wayland sessions. But now we have Cinnamon with an experimental session, XFCE with one, Mate even started work on that, Pantheon already works on Wayland, so I think maybe it just didn't take them all that long to do it, and I think it's good. We do have a lot of choice on Linux. Preserving that choice is a good thing. Even if those desktops are just not as used as GNOME and KDE, they're still an important part of the Linux desktop ecosystem, and having them be future-proof for when X11 finally keels over and gets kicked out, that's important. We also do have some unfortunate news, as Linux Format, a UK-based magazine, will end its 25-year-long run with issue 329. Linux Format was a real-life paper physical magazine launched in May 2000, and with 13 issues per year, it contained a mix of articles, of news, analysis, reviews, tutorials, interviews, basically what you can find on the internet, but with a lot more expertise, I'd wager, and also in a physical form. They didn't share the reasons why they were closing down, but chances are it's just that paper magazines have a hard time competing with the free information that you can get online. I mean, free online info already has a hard time competing with free AI summaries, so I can't imagine how a paper magazine would compete for a lot of people. Personally, I still do read some physical magazines, one for Warhammer, which is my hobby and also a secondary channel that I run, but also for some video game stuff. I was subscribed to Edge magazine for a long time, which the name isn't really good. It's not an edgy magazine. It's just that they do super solid opinions on the artistical side of video games. Now, those physical magazines, I think, can only survive if they do bring that sort of very different outlook, but also some of my viewers and Patreon subscribers told me that they did read Linux format, so I guess they did have that specific little extra thing that made you want to go back. So hopefully people working there find another job that they really like or another publication that they can work for. Always sad to see those things go away, so hopefully everyone's fine. Now, you might be watching this video on Peertube, the federated, Fediverse-enabled, ActivityPub-enabled competitor to YouTube. And well, Peertube is launching a crowdfunding campaign for their mobile application. They have already released the iOS and Android first versions of this app. They are already very competent implementations, but they want to improve on that first draft, and obviously they need some amount of financial support to pay the developers to do that. This campaign aims to reach at least 15,000 euros for their first goal, which would provide background video playback, casting videos to TVs, notifications for new videos from the channels that you subscribe to, and also changing the video definition so you can save on your data plan if you're watching on something other than Wi-Fi. If they reach 35,000 euros, they will also add some creator-focused tools, like being able to manage your channels from the app, being able to edit the video metadata, like chapters, subtitles, and the like. They will also add statistics for creators and let them upload videos from their smartphones. At 55,000 euros, they will allow creators to live stream from their phone without any additional equipment or software needed. And if they reach the last 75,000 euros goal, they basically said they would use all the extra money to fund all the various Framasoft projects, because Peertube is developed by Framasoft. It would pay for server hosting, for more features. It's basically the support everything we do, not just Peertube tier of their campaign. They've already reached 6,400 euros at the time I'm recording this. They have 18 days to go, so it is likely that they will only reach the first goal, but that's already a lot of cool improvements to their application if they reach that. So if you like Peertube, if you watch my stuff or something else on Peertube, the link is in the description. Honestly, Framasoft and all their projects are really good free and open source citizens. They've provided a lot of tools for free to the community to try and escape Google and other big tech companies. I've been following them pretty much ever since I started using Linux back in 2006, because I think they were one of the RSS feeds that were plugged in by default in LiveRia when you install that on Ubuntu. But it is a fantastic platform. Peertube is really good. I can't really make money off of it, so if everyone moves to Peertube, I'll have to close down shop. But it is an interesting project. I really like it. I do want to keep publishing to it. And if you like it and you want a better mobile app for Peertube, you know where to go. The link is in the description for their campaign. And finally, to conclude on this episode, GeForce Now is now on Steam Deck. The application can now be downloaded, although only from the desktop mode. You have to move to that, go to their website, download their .bin installer, right-click it, go to Properties, make it executable, then double-click it, and then it's going to launch the installer. It's not a smooth trip to FlatHub or Discover or whatever else. But their installer at least manages to add a shortcut in your Steam library so you can launch GeForce Now from the normal Steam Deck UI as a non-Steam game. It also obviously will run on Linux PCs. I would expect that installer to just work on any Linux system. And it supports up to 4K 60, although you will need a very solid connection for that. It also supports HDR10, DLSS, all the best graphical settings that you might want, because obviously the game runs on an NVIDIA server somewhere, not on your device. This thing isn't necessarily a service I would use personally, but it does have advantages. You get way better battery life, because the game is streamed, not being rendered on your device. You get better performance, because obviously the NVIDIA servers will run games better than your Steam Deck, and also you're able to play games that the deck itself doesn't support. A game that doesn't have SteamOS anti-cheat support will run fine on GeForce Now when it wouldn't be playable on the Steam Deck natively. I think they do need to improve the install flow of that app. Getting it out as a flat hub application would probably be easier. You could just open Discover and install the app. It still requires a trip to desktop mode, and that's another issue with SteamOS. It would be nice if they had some amount of applications that you could install from Steam directly, but that would mean Valve would have to open up to competitors potentially, like GeForce Now and maybe other stores, so probably they don't want to do that unless they're forced to do so, but it would be a better install flow. You can do that with Steam Deck extensions, Decky plugins and stuff like that, but out of the box it's not really supported, and that's too bad. Still, GeForce Now might be a good option if there are a few games that you would really want to play on your Steam Deck, but it's just not capable of doing so, or anti-cheat blocks you. If you want to subscribe to that service, it looks like a competent one. I've seen solid reviews of it, so having it available on Linux natively like that is good. So that's gonna be it for today. I'll leave you on this message from our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. You all know about Tuxedo by now if you've been listening to any episode of this show. They make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux out of the box. And the reason why this really matters is because, well, you know that the hardware is fully compatible with Linux. I only use their devices these days. Everything that you can hear or watch that I make is done on one of their laptops, the Infinity Book Pro 16, and all my gaming needs are served by one of their desktops, the Tuxedo Cube. They have a big range of computers. They will have something for everyone at every price point with a lot of customization options and options for the hardware inside. So as always, click the link in the description if you want to know more about them and get yourself one of their devices. They're really solid. Anyway, this will conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed watching it or listening to it or whatever else you've been doing while this was playing in the background. You know where all the YouTube buttons are. You know why they're important. I won't bother you with that. Please click them. And there are plenty of links in the description to support the channel as well with some pretty cool advantages. So do check that out if you want to. Thank you all for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!